And now new books for spring 2016 on my new channel. This will be history. I've got history and science and biography and philosophy and then some opinion and Decline of the West culture kind of books and then a couple literature. So this will be history. And on history, I've got some World War II, some stuff on Rome, some ancient history, some kind of more broad on all of history in one book, and then one on the Italian Renaissance. So I'll start in chronological order. So here's a book on Antiquity. This is by Norman Cantor. And I think I was reading a bit of this. I think this was the one no, I think actually it was a different one. I was going to say there was another history book I was reading that's more on anthropology, and it was very, very postmodern, and it's glaring in the text. I don't think this was the one. It says so from the birth of Sumerian civilization to the fall of the Roman Empire. And I really want to get back into doing, and I haven't released them, but some of my longer standing viewers will remember a few years ago me talking about doing a civilization series. And I actually had some video on it. Just the quality is not so great. The video quality is not great. The audio I think is okay, but the video quality is not great. And it's me actually going through about 5 or 6 books, reading them, and talking about time periods. And this is before Homo sapiens even. And then I had gotten up to Samaria. And this book even starts in Samaria. So this is a book that I would also add to that list of trying to synthesize tons of material, which I think is a grand goal of mine. Not only to figure out how to synthesize stuff, which is already a challenge, but to provide that in these YouTube videos, to synthesize tons of material. Just like I've been doing those other book videos, like the one that the Plato's Cave one on this channel by Kernan. Reading books and then synthesizing the material and then trying to present it in a smaller format in less. So the time it would take you to listen to all of those Kernan videos is a lot less time it would take you to read the whole book. So in doing the civilization videos, I'm also been interested in trying to synthesize all the historical material and connecting it to, well, what does it have to do with our lives now in 2016? So this is another book to add to a pool that I would take information from and connect it to other sources and try to come up with a neutral or a positive view on history that at least can tell us something about the present. So there's another book that I can add to that series if I were to continue it. Here's a book by Paul Johnson. You may know Paul Johnson. He's not a PhD historian, actually, but he is a historian in the sense that he's written a lot of books and a lot of bestsellers. So this is a history of the Jews. I also have quite a few of his other ones, Modern Times and Intellectuals. And I also have recently published a biography on Churchill. And I have that, and I'll show you that when I do the biography section. And he also wrote a history of the English-speaking people, which I think I have that. And then he also wrote a history of the American people. So this is the history of the Jews. And like I've said in other videos, I don't know why so many people are suspicious of the Jews in history and believe that the Jews are the ones controlling everything or some kind of shadow government. And I don't really understand where that comes from, but I see it a lot. And does it have something to do with that they tend to have money? They tend to be doctors and lawyers, as they say, which is statistically correct. And so is that the conspiracy? Is that where it comes from? I don't know. So I'm interested to see about, okay, well, let's look at the history of the Jews then. So this is a pretty massive book. And it actually goes all the way from the Holocaust. Or no, it talks about the Holocaust. But it also has Zionism, so that's Israel. That's the end of the book, and then the beginning of the book is Israelites, which I imagine will be from the Bible. Another thing I should mention is that I was making some timelines to try to understand history. So just using lined paper and drawing out, like every piece of lined paper was 500 years. And so I'd start at 3000 BC to 2500 BC. So this is the era of ancient Egypt. All the way to about 0, ancient Egypt is relevant, and then it's not relevant. But so each page is 500 years. You get to about 1000 to 500 BC, you get the Greeks, and then 500 to 0, you get the rise of Rome, and then 0 to 500 is the decline and fall of Rome, and then 500 AD to 1000 AD is the Dark Ages, and then 1000 to 1500 is the middle, and then you get the Renaissance in there and all that, and then 15 to 2000, and of course, it's kind of modern times lumped in with the Renaissance and the Enlightenment and all that. And I was looking up religious figures to put them in the timeline, like Jesus and Muhammad and Moses and Abraham. And according to what I found on the internet, which is on Wikipedia, Moses, we have no historical evidence he existed. And so he's likely mythical. And I didn't even know that. So that's just nonsense, really. And Abraham, same thing with him. He's mythical. There's no evidence. We have evidence for Jesus Christ, so he's around. We have evidence for Buddha. We have evidence for Confucius, which actually were just before, I think they were just before 500, or it's either 500 AD or 0. They were just before that. And I think they must have been just before that. And they were actually around together, which was, I didn't know. Confucius and Buddha were around about the same time. And like Sun Tzu, which I guess not religious, but all these kinds of people. But I was floored that some of them were actually mythical and don't really have any historical evidence to back up that they actually existed. And the Jewish is the most egregious, it seems, that they have these figures that actually didn't exist, or at least we don't have any historical evidence they existed. So anyways, maybe the stuff on the Israelites won't be that useful because stuff in the Bible is not exactly a historical evidence. But he's got to start somewhere, so I'll be curious where he starts with the Jews. Okay, and another one, this is on Cairo. So this is not only about the history of Cairo, Egypt, but this is also then into the present. How did Cairo change into modern times? So this is really a book on the city of Cairo and its history. I put it into the little ancient section. I don't know where I would put it, though. Where do you put a book on a city? I don't really have a book. I don't have a section called The History of Egypt. So this book is going to destroy my library's organization because I don't know where I would put it. I guess I don't know, where would I put this? History, general history maybe? But my general history section is becoming so huge, it's probably about 500 or 600 books now, that I may have to start divvying that up too. But anyways, so I thought, alongside my study of Egypt, which I've done a little bit of, a book on Cairo would be interesting. I'm not quite sure what Cairo's name was in ancient Egypt. It would not have been called Cairo. I don't even think it was Alexandria, because that was a city. And that's where you may know about the Great Library of Alexandria, the Great Lighthouse of Alexandria. But I don't know if that was modern day Cairo. So, anyways, so there's a book on Cairo. Okay, next will be on Rome. So I've got quite a few books here on Rome. And of course, Rome has to be studied. Rome at one time owned the known world. Just like at one time Greece owned the known world through Alexander. So here's a few books on Greece. Here's the Conquest of Gaul, I guess by Caesar, maybe. Kind of reminds me of how Churchill wrote World War II. And Caesar, of course, writes on his own conquest, right? So there's the Conquest of Gaul. Here's the Roman history, the reign of Augustus. This is by Cassius Dio. So I guess another Roman who was around during the time. So there's another addition to Rome. Hadrian's Empire. So this is a more modern book. When Rome Ruled the World by Danziger and Nicholas Purcell. So Hadrian's Empire. I don't know if Hadrian was at the height of Rome, but maybe. And I've got a book by Michael Grant. You may know Michael Grant wrote a lot of books on ancient Greece and ancient Rome. So I've got quite a few Michael Grant. Now, the Army of Caesars. So this should be more about the military history. Speaking of military history, I found another one of Victor Davis Hanson's books. By the way, I should mention, I don't buy these new. I would be bankrupt if I had to buy all these books I own new. Most of these books are I'd say 95% of the books I own are used, which means they cost me between $2 and $4. So here's another book by Victor Davis Hanson, The Father of Us All, War and History, Ancient and Modern. You may know Victor Davis Hanson is a military historian and basically lectures in warfare and military history from ancient Greece, mostly ancient Greece, maybe, but he actually has a very good lecture on World War II on YouTube that you can find. So I just was curious about what this spans. So he starts on chapter 1. He says, "Why study war? Classical lessons and post 9/11 wars." So that should be really good. This is all nice commentary. Another one which I got, which should be really good, and also includes Victor Davis Hanson, and I actually just got this, Tuesday? Just got this on Tuesday. What If? New York Times bestseller. The world's foremost military historians imagined what might have been. So this is edited by Robert Cowley, but this includes Victor Davis Hanson, and this is fantastic. It's got to be the height of being a historian has got to be your ability to understand what's happened, but also to use that information and to speculate as to what might happen in the future and what could have happened in the past. That's got to be the height of being a historian.